I know with like today's day and age, like the political like temperatures, like getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And here I am just thinking, well, I don't want to grow up. There's too much contradiction.
Too much contradiction and way too much friction.
Hey, yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we defend that title is we go from Ukraine and we travel to Uganda, but we take the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I am the one who is just so ready for hockey season to get back up and running. Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, well, I guess not the only, because I'm ready for hockey season to start myself, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who want to know what we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's kind of right there in the title. Every week, me and Ryan choose an album, a music album to listen to, and then we come here to discuss our favorite tracks, our least favorite tracks, what we like, what we don't like, what we thought stood out, what we thought could have stood out a little more. And at the end of the show, we give a rating out of 10. We pick album recommendations based off the next album you'd want to listen to if you like this album, or rather just the next progression. We'll discuss later. And also, we continue the cycle at the very end. So, in the continuing of that cycle, Ryan, what did we talk about last week?
Last week, we talked about the majestic Purple One himself. We discussed Prince and his revolution and their documentation through sound of the movie Purple Rain. And for me, I was very happy about my thoughts about doing the review and everything like that. Not at the risk of sounding like a broken record here. Very happy walking away from the review. Like, it was a good time. It was an absolute blessing for me to revisit some tracks with a more focused mindset. Not that I didn't focus on listening to Prince before, but I mean, doing a show like this, you got to focus on specific tracks and you build up relationships with them. So yeah, if you guys want to hear my full thoughts on Purple Rain by Prince, just go back one in that podcasting platform that you're listening to us on right now. It shouldn't be that hard to find. Matt, what were your thoughts about Purple Rain last week?
I'm glad I picked it because for those who have not been listening as of late, the picks that I have selected for albums have been kind of mid. Not bad albums per se, like Coldplay or Diana Ross and the Supremes Meet the Temptations. I thought both of those were good albums and not necessarily great albums. Purple Rain, I felt a little higher about. And you want to find out how much higher, again, you can listen to that episode. But I'm right there with you. I'm glad we covered that last week because it was fun, not just to find out what we agreed on, but kind of sort of what we disagreed on, because there's a teeny tiny bit in there. But again, fun episode, fun album to listen to, and I'm glad we were able to talk about it. And somehow, the album that we're going to be talking about this week is one that you chose, which is a little surprising, but we'll get into why that's surprising. So, Ryan, what are we talking about this week?
So, in the little, series that I've been taking us on, and, the listener as well, is I've been, for the most part, with, maybe, a couple exceptions here or there, I've been focusing in on, important years in music pre-2000. So, the year that I wanted to zero in on was the year of 1977. I gave you the choice of choosing between two locations, New York and London, with the lens of punk rock at the time, and you chose New York because America, am I right? America first, right, man?
Oh, jeez.
And as such, we are going to be talking about Marquee Moon by the band Television. Now, for the dear listeners out there who may be asking the question, wait. What is a television? Well, I mean, I'm sorry that I have to tell this to you, you Amish people who don't have a television. It's a device that people stare at for like extended hours throughout the day. And also, if you are listening to this and if you're Amish, okay, cool. God bless you.
well, to be fair, I mean, that is a legit question. Like, obviously, you're joking a little bit, but considering that a lot of younger listeners who might be listening might be more used to watching things on their phones, maybe asking what a television is could mean something in that context.
Yeah, true. And it would be actually, well, one, it would be funny if people are listening to us through casting our podcast onto their TV and asking what is the TV, but I digress. I'm going down a rabbit hole. Pulling us out of a rabbit hole right now, though, is me talking about the band Television, and just I'll do a little blurb about them and what led them to release Marquee Moon, their debut album, noting that. So the band emerged from the 1970s New York rock scene. And that's what really kind of got me interested in talking about them as a whole, because I've been reading the biography by Thurston Moore, who is the guitarist for Sonic Youth, and he talks about being in CBGBs and seeing Television perform and just how impactful they were. So that's what piqued my interest in talking about the group. So the band's story began with Tom Verlaine on vocals and guitar, and Richard Hell, who does bass and vocals for the band. They were both, aspiring poets. After moving to New York, they formed their first band, Matt. In the, I guess, somewhat ever expanding series that we have here, do you want to take a guess at what the first band was named?
Oh boy. Transistor Radio.
I mean, in a sense, maybe that would be close, but I'm just going to say it. The band was first named the Neon Boys. So that's a fun band name.
It is.
And at the time, they formed the band with drummer Billy Fica. The group eventually evolved into Television in 1973 with the addition of the second guitarist Richard Lloyd. The name which was suggested by Richard Hell, the name being Television, was a pun on tell a vision. So speaking a vision. So I mean, that's a little bit high brain, knowledge there, I guess, or pun. Anyways, I digress. So, the group became a central fixture at the legendary club CBGB. For those of you who are wondering what a CBGB is, it's a legendary rock club in New York City. It was really famous for hosting punk rock groups like Television, Patti Smith, and just a couple other groups throughout the time. It was really I don't want to say the birthplace of punk rock in America, but it was definitely a central area. So after their Television's manager Terry Ork convinced the owner to give the group a regular gig, the band's innovative sound helped establish the club as the epicenter of what I essentially just described as being the forefront of music between new wave and punk rock. So now, for those of you who know what Television sounds like, that they are not going to sound like your traditional punk rock group like Patti Smith or even the Ramones or anything like that from the time. So, their music stood out with from their contemporaries. They were rooted in the punk aesthetic, but they drew inspiration from jazz and 1960s rock with a focus on clean, interlocking guitar work rather than typical riffs. And like due to this unique style, the group quickly earned themselves like a devoted cult following. So a little like blurb about like what led to the release of Marquee Moon. The first domino to fall in terms of like leading to the path of this album is there was a crucial lineup change as the band's musical direction grew more like intricate. There was interpersonal like friction between Verlaine and Hell. Verlaine felt Hell's raw and untrained style didn't fit the band's evolving sound, which led to Hell's departure in 1975. Hell then went on to form other bands. Hell was replaced by Fred Smith, who brought a more polished and reliable presence to the rhythm section. And then with this now solidified lineup, the band released their debut independent single entitled Little Johnny Jules, which became an underground hit. This success led to a deal with Electric Records, and the band's extensive live performances had perfected their sound, and they were able to record Marquee Moon, the album we're talking about quickly. This album, like I alluded to, was released in 1977, and not going to go too much more into the album itself because that's the purposes of the review here. But before I dive into my my experience with television, which Matt, you know the answer already. I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt. What is your experience and what is your relationship with this band?
So my relationship with this band and its discography, or rather just this album, if I'm being completely honest, is they've always been sort of this band I've kind of had my ear on for a while, or my eye on, because I was never a huge punk person. Like, I listened to some stuff by the Sex Pistols, really like some stuff from the Clash, but really haven't dug into like the deep underground stuff, and to a sense I still haven't. But beyond that little surface level of like punk bands that everybody knows, is probably that second tier where I would put Television. And as I mentioned before, I have the original book for the 500 Greatest Albums of All Time by Rolling Stone, and I saw that Marquee Moon was in there. I was like, a band called Television released the 100 and something album of all time, because it wasn't the top 200. It's like, that's interesting. It's kind of always just sort of skirted the back of my mind. And then one day I was just thinking, you know what? To hell with it. So I went to a certain online website that shall not be mentioned. You probably know what it is because we all have used it. And bought myself a used CD copy of this album. And I've listened to it quite a bit ever since purchasing that, because I want to say that was roughly a little over a decade ago, maybe, because I know the first time I listened to it, I was going from, I want to say, Chippewa to Ambridge, and I was picking my brother up from his job because we were only running a couple cars at the time. So that was a core memory I have with this album, and it's definitely one worth discussing. Ryan, how about you?
So my experience with this record is like, one time I was traveling in a car with you that you were driving, and you played this on your your radio, and I was just like, this is actually pretty good stuff, man, pretty good stuff. So as Ryan Kearns does. Sorry for referring to myself in the third person there. I added it to my hey, listen to this later playlist. I did in fact listen to the whole album later, and I thought, you know what? It's pretty good. And then, like I do, I just tossed it right back into the fridge in terms of my musical, rotation. And like I do sometimes with leftover food or like my blueberries that I just shove in the back of the refrigerator. Unfortunately, I forgot about it, and I figured it'd be an excellent opportunity for us to review such an album and dive right back into an album that you introduced me to, ironically enough. So
this is one of those rare times where aside from the obvious episodes where I choose an album that I know for a fact that you have not listened to, and occasionally we have not listened to, that would be the case. Because yeah, this is something that goes back years before we started this podcast. I'm pretty sure that was the Columbus trip on New Year's Day, if I'm not mistaken, is when I introduced you to this. When I was driving back from Columbus at a normal speed, but that's another story for another day. That being said, sorry for adding your driving skills like that, Ryan. I didn't mean to bring that up, but I felt the need to.
Yeah, you felt the need to, and I felt the need for speed that night. So we are. I mean, the crime has been committed, but I mean. Anyways, pivoting on over to the review here. I think we are ready to dive into Marquee Moon, if you will so indulge me.
I will so indulge you. Let's kick things off with the opening track, which is See No Evil.
So, with See No Evil, I got a good taste coming right out of the gate of what was to come with this record here in terms of like stuff that I really did latch onto. And what I've latched onto is really intricate guitar work and excellent background band, rhythm section and like backing bands. Usually for our reviews here, I dive into the lyrics and the song structure, but whenever we dive into like albums like this where like the backing band is like really really tight, I always appreciate that. And with See No Evil here, right in the verses, you get a perfect example of like how tight everything is with that dizzying guitar lick. And for me, like I almost felt like that guitar lick that they were utilizing there was hypnotic. And yeah, the rest of the backing band in the verses, they're doing a good solid job holding down like the song. And the chorus was a solid time for me. Has a very coded Ryan Kearns element here with the call and response here, with the beginning with I understand all, I see no, and like so on and so forth. And one thing I did like about the chorus and how it ends off, where you get that like pop, like evil, and then it just dives right back into the transition from out of the chorus into the second verse. Which, speaking of such things, I did like how that transition was utilized. I thought that was utilized pretty effectively. The guitar solo here that I found in See No Evil was pretty good. Just wish it was developed a little bit more, and I feel like that might be a little bit of I don't want to say a controversial take, with the exception of one track here, which Matt might already know which track it is, that like a lot of people praise the guitar work here between Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd in terms of like their utilizations and being excellent guitar players. So look, I will note that it was Richard Lloyd here who did do the solo in See No Evil. So mark that for what it's worth. So and the outro of the song is pretty solid. Do like the call and response dynamic being written home here. The overall effect that I felt towards the end, it was almost again dizzying, but I kind of like that, man. The overall lyrical focus here is right in the title in See No Evil, and the way that the lyrics discuss several aspects of the narrator wanting and desiring different things, but not failing to see the moral implications of it. It was a fun time. Nothing really too deep or anything like that, but I did like the lyrics. They were doing a good, solid job there. And the highlight lyrically I found with See No Evil was at the end, where you get the different discussions on how what we do impacts the ones we love, and was specifically focusing on our words and actions. So yeah, so I did enjoy See No Evil. It was a great opening track for me. Not a top track for me throughout this record. It's not a favorite track for me. And for full disclosure, I have a top 3 with this record and a bottom 1.
Okay, all right. So My thoughts on See No Evil, very similar to yours in a lot of respects. First of all, I agree that that jagged guitar riff that opens up the entire record is rather infectious, and the interplay between Lloyd and Verlaine is just very good on this track. It's not something incredible or like amazing compared to other tracks we'll talk about, but the guitar tandem works well. And I really think the rhythm section does a fantastic job of keeping things in tow. Billy Ficca and Fred Smith are just keeping tone, and they're not so tight that they're just sort of stiffing and, you know, walking the bass or playing a simple 4/4 rhythm. Like they're pretty loose in their performances, but not so loose that things go out of control. Like it's a very, very good performance. And I agree with you that the vocals on the chorus are the highlight of the song for me, particularly when that build of I see no evil, and then they just sort of spread out and scatter drill vocally to the next verse. I like that quite a bit because it is very youthful and punky, and like you said, this band is not necessarily a punk band per se. They're not, three chords and a punch to the face like the Sex Pistols were. But they did have their own sort of angsty style, and that definitely comes through in Verlaine's vocals. And the lyrics being what they are about, I know you said they're about, not seeing the moral implications. It could be that, or it could be the fact that they see the moral implications, but they don't see any evil in doing what they are about to do. And we've talked about songs like this in the past where there's just this element of wanting to risk it all for that pure moment of bliss. And it is bold that this is the opening track on the album in that regard. Usually you get a track like this, like penultimate or final track, where it's just like, well, it's now or nothing. And here they're just like, all right, we'll start with it, see where it goes. And that is just a bold move, which I do respect quite a bit. If I'm being honest, though, this track just sort of lands in like the good song bucket. It's a great track, but didn't do enough to elevate itself near any top thing. And by the way, that is not a pun. We'll explain later. But for me on this album, I have a top 3 and a bottom 0.
So it could possibly be Fight O'Clock City, but full disclosure, kind of spoiler alert here. My bottom track, I'm not going to be like, oh, this is an abomination of all, musical tracks. There was one element of it that just ruined the track for me, but yeah, I'm not going to, crap on that track specifically so much. But I'm glad that you did enjoy See No Evil, and I did enjoy your take on the lyrical front, and it kind of made me appreciate the ending track just a little bit more. We'll get to Torn Curtain when we do, obviously, but thanks to your dissection of the lyrics, it kind of elevated my appreciation for that track later on. Just a hair more, man.
I appreciate it. But that is several tracks down the line. Before we get to those, we must get through the other ones first, and that starts with Venus, if you'll so indulge me as to move on to Venus.
Yeah, man. Tell us what's going on with, Venus de Milo.
Well, what's going on with Venus de Milo? For those who don't know, Venus de Milo is a statue of a woman, a bare-chested woman, without any arms. And what does that have to do with this song? Well, it's kind of complicated. This song is, to put it very simply, a song about artsy guys doing artsy things, which, according to Genius.com, might be an acid trip, or simply a walk down New York City, or some combination of the two. In any case, Verlaine sings about how he's seeing all these images and somehow falls into the arms of Venus de Milo, which, falling into someone's arms, but they don't have any arms. Get it? Honestly, though, this track basically keeps on musically with the other track. I don't think the guitar riff is quite as punchy as it was on See No Evil, but the band does do a very good job. I do like the vocal interplay on the chorus where the band's just sort of confused as to what Verlaine is saying, almost like they're playing into his BS. Like, they're just going, what? Huh? Like, several years before Tim Allen made it famous. And I do like that imagery of not knowing where you are and wondering what's all going around you, and sort of having that overwhelming feeling of just being surrounded by all these different things that you're not familiar with. And again, as confusing as of an imagery as it is, just from a metaphysical perspective, I do like that term of falling into the arms of Venus de Milo, because it's such a random, weird, observational metaphor that you're just kind of like, what does that mean? And the fact you don't know what it means is kind of the point. It's just so overwhelming that it's confusing. If I'm being completely honest, though, this is not a bad track, but it probably is my least favorite. Not a least favorite. I'm not going to dock it points for being a bad track, because it's a solid track nonetheless. It would go in the good song bucket as well. But not enough about it stood out to me compared to the other tracks on this album, which is less about how rough this song is, because it's good, but just how, well, we'll get to it.
For me, Venus, I'm like mentally, I think I'm a little bit higher on the track than you. It's not a favorite track for me, so I'm gonna get that right out of the game. The cat's out of the bag. Venus is on the top track for me, but I still enjoy it quite a bit. I would almost maybe flirt with putting it between the good song to the great song bucket, like just right in between, riding on that fence there. But yeah, a couple of things that you've touched on, I really did enjoy, like the back and forth between the vocals in the chorus that you alluded to. I noted that, I clocked that. That was a fun touch, and also, yeah, there wasn't really like you said, there wasn't really a guitar lick to really sink your teeth into and ride throughout the whole trip in Venus here. But what I did enjoy was just like the simple fact of the ability for the backing band to just be each doing a very unique part. And I'm including guitar here as well. And you could easily just, if you're listening to this album on headphones or any other listening device. But I found this most prominent when I was listening to this on earbuds, that you can just bounce back and forth between different instruments and to focus on and not get bored. And I'm always a fan of instrumentation like that. The guitar solo here from Tom Verlaine was fine. I mean, doesn't really add too much more to a song. I wouldn't even say it's a guitar solo. It might have been noted in Genius.com as a solo, but it really didn't add much to the track. It was more of an interlude section, an interlude feature, if for lack of a better descriptor there. That being said, though, the falling arpeggios that you hear after the choruses in the track here, that was a highlight for me on the guitar front. Those were executed so well, and considering the chorus was talking about falling into the arms of Venus de Milo, yeah, that was an excellent songwriting execution there. I am of the mindset, I know you alluded to how on Genius.com they said that this could either be a trip down New York City or going on an acid trip. I'm more saying that this is just a story of someone getting hooked on drugs. You kind of alluded to that fact a little bit in your dissection of the lyrics. And the lyrics as a whole, they do a solid job of progressing the story that Tom Verlaine is telling here. And I also, considering that the song in my brain is about someone getting hooked on drugs, I do like how it ends with the talk about coming out of the arms of Venus de Milo. So that was a clever use of lyrics there. So yeah, Venus, it's a good track for me. I would say that I think I enjoy The previous track is just a hair more, but they're still good for. Each song is good in their own right. So
Agreed, agreed. I think this 1-2 punch or 1-2 pat on the back, if you will, of See No Evil in Venus definitely does get the album off on the right foot. And I am ready, if you are Ryan, to move on to track 3, which is the song Friction.
I am absolutely ready, man. Let me tell you about some friction here. It's whenever you just rub up against the surface and you feel that like little sense of like heat building up. I digress. So, anyways, friction. So right out of the gate, we're back at it with my appreciation of the interplay between the backing band here. Like the thing I wanted to highlight coming right out of the gate is the guitar and the bass here. They're doing great stuff. I really do like the dynamic between the two here. They're complementing each other so well. The guitar was doing a falling lick to start everything off. Like that was very solid, and I love that lick being used and being played during the verses as well. Like I thought that was a really good texture moment on the sonic palette. The chorus here is solid, and I do love like the wink wink nudge nudge clever pause on Dick Shin. Like that was fun. I did appreciate Tom winking at the camera there. And what really sold me on this track, like entirely, was the random like moments that you get in the second verse where the guitar does unique lines after different lyrics as almost to illustrate the scene that Tom is laying out. And for that, I was just like, that is really clever. I really did enjoy that quite a bit. Like, in the second verse, you get no, I think it's more the third verse. I digress. So in the third verse, you get how does a snake get out of its skin? Here's a depiction. Oh, stop this head motion, set the sails. All us boys are gonna wind up in jail. Like there's always just in certain moments out this track, you get illustrations by the guitar doing unique lines, and I love that. And speaking about the guitar playing here, the instrumental break was solid in this track, and I do like the almost like winding guitar strokes that you get there. That was a great moment there, and the outro as a whole was just great with the band just jamming, just riding the song home, and like a lyrical highlight for me was found where Tom is singing, "If I ever catch the ventriloquist, I'll squeeze his head right into my fist." That was fun. I did enjoy that. So yeah, on the lyrical front, to just summarize what the song is about. Like I took it as a general song about just expressing frustrations about life, and it doesn't need to be entirely all deep to be a great song, especially with how much I was digging the instrumentation there. So, the only other thing I got to say about Friction, it did land in a top spot for me in this record, in this review here, and Friction landed at number 2. It's my second favorite track off the whole album.
And for me, Friction starts what I would like to call the rest of the album because, as you've guessed, or not even guessed if you're listening, you've heard what I said about See No Evil in Venus being moderately good, solid, decent tracks. And spoiler alert, the rest are pretty much banger after banger after banger. And we start with Friction because you talk about the instrumentation on this track. It is amazing. It feels like this is the one track on this album that comes close to being a straightforward rock song in a sense, because while the rest of the tracks do have rock elements, they do have a little bit of a artsy feel to them. Here it feels like this could almost be covered by Skynyrd or Little Feat or maybe like the Allman Brothers. Like, it has a boogie to it that seems very straightforward that hearing it for the first time in a long time caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, this actually cooks quite a bit. Especially the way that the guitar work, especially on the lead. Yes, it's doing some like those lines you mentioned after the verses where it just has those little like trinkets and dive bombs, but the way that just has those jagged moments of just riffing like crazy, I really did appreciate that a lot. And the rest of the band outside of Verlaine on lead is doing a great job keeping up. Not just musically, but vocally, I love the calm response, particularly on the choruses and the outro, how they just say friction with, such conviction. And you talk about the lyrics being about general frustration with life. I thought the lyrics were kind of cryptic here. Not that that's a bad thing, though, because Tom Verlaine sings these lyrics as if his life depended on them. So when he sings about finding that ventriloquist and squeezing his head into his fist, like, he sounds like he means it, and even though he does the little wink at the camera, which kudos to you for catching that, he definitely has the attitude of confidence in whatever he's singing, whether what he's singing is meant to be picked up by everybody or not. And they're fun. They're fun lyrics on top of that, so I did appreciate that, but it just, again, instrumentation-wise and performance-wise, this is just a groovy track that, again, from the start with the very interwoven guitars that are doing a bunch of different things, the outro where you get that little feedback at the end, I thought was a nice touch. This is just a really good track. I also have it in my top 3 at number 3.
All right, man. All right, I'm updating my Hey Listen to This scorecard here, just so I can be an ultra fan here. So yeah, I'm glad that you did enjoy Friction so much that it was a top track for you. Interested to see if we're gonna be entering Final Clock here, but we'll discuss that when we do. But one other note I want to throw at the listener about Friction here, the solo-ish kind of section that I alluded to, the instrumental break where you get that rapid guitar strokes. That is from Tom Verlaine, so just keep up that running bit where I'm labeling guitar solos. So yeah, the more you know. But yeah, the lyrics, like you said, they were cryptic. I would agree with you. That's why I kind of went the general, went the route of hey, this is a general song about just being frustrated with life. So, the performance, like you alluded to on the vocal front, was solid. So, yeah, without any further ado, Matthew.
Yes, Ryan.
Are you ready to talk about the next track, the longest track on the whole record, Marquee Moon?
Yes, the longest track, the title track, Marquee Moon. And oh boy, this track. Where do I start? Just from the opening seconds, you get one guitar doing that very almost Morse code type of riff, that dan it, and then you have the bass calling and responding with that right away, and then you have a third guitar doing the da 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 da, and it's so intricate and it's so beautifully executed. And the first few times I've listened to this song, probably the first 5 or 6 times, it was hard for me to pinpoint where one was on the downbeat, because everything just comes in at such random times. You're just like, okay, is that the start of the riff? No, is that the start of the riff? Until Billy Ficca comes in to clear things up and put a proper one on the downbeat and make everything come clear to focus. I love that opening so much. And again, it shows the grand guitar work between Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, just perfectly on sync. And then it gets into the song proper, and once again we have lyrics that are somewhat cryptic, but less so. If for no other reason than Tom Verlaine sings them better this time than he did on Friction. He's talking about lyrics such as, I was listening to the rain. I was hearing something else. The Cadillac pulled out of the graveyard. And he said, "Get in." The Cadillac pulled out back into the graveyard. I got out again. And you're just wondering, what the hell is he talking about? And we don't know. I honestly do not know what he's talking about when he talks about Cadillacs in the graveyard or listening to the rain. Although there are metaphorical ideologies that you could probably connect with, like listening to the rain, hearing something else, like it's like, oh, is it rain or is it like a tornado or a thunderstorm? And then there's the second verse where he's talking to this guy asking why he doesn't go mad, and the man says, "Listen here, Junior, don't you be so happy, and for heaven's sake, don't you be so sad." Like, that's a lyric anybody can understand. It's a great lyric. And then you get the chorus, which has Tom stuttering a little bit before the words come clear. But again, much like Friction, and much like most of the first half of this album, he sings it with such conviction that it doesn't matter if you understand what he's talking about. You know that he knows exactly what he's talking about. Even if he doesn't know what he's talking about, he is convincing you, and possibly himself, that he knows what he's talking about. It is a great, great vocal performance. But the vocal performance is nothing compared to the guitar solo, which runs the second half of this song, and boy, it starts with just, again, that Morse code riff and the band doing its thing before Verlaine kicks in with this furious Neil Young type strumming before building and building and building, dropping back and building and building and building again, just elevating the sound of his guitar up the scale to the point where you're just feel like you're on this roller coaster going straight to heaven. Like, and then it just drops and then it goes right back up again. And then at roughly the 9-minute mark, it just has this explosion of like fireworks going off and little droplets of rain coming from the sky on top of that. It is a guitar solo that is meant to be heard and not discussed, even though that's what we have to do here. But man, it is just a wonderful, magnificent guitar solo by Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, since he's also a guitar. And the band behind him is, once again, they keep up and they keep the rhythm locked in, but they don't go all over the place. They're not stiff. They find that sweet spot of keeping tempo with flares of chops. Like, it is just great. And before I hand it off over to you, two things. One, and I apologize if I beat you to this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The guitar solo has its own annotation on Genius.com. And the annotation just says Pure Heavenly Bliss, and it has 27 upvotes. I just discovered that today, and that is hilarious to me. Like, usually Genius is for, like, trying to figure out what lyrics mean. There is just a section for the guitar solo where it's just like, here's what this guitar solo sounds like, and everyone's just like, yep, nope, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, Marquee Moon is, to me, one of the most underrated rock songs ever. It has one of the most underrated guitar solos ever. I love it. And surprise, surprise, it is in my top 3 at number 2.
Wow. Okay, I have to update my scorecard here because I already had this pinned as like number 1. I was just like number 1 with a bullet, man. Okay, well, the scorecard is updated. And yeah, man. Okay, hold on. Let me scroll up to my notes. Well, this is going to be awkward.
Awkward in what way? Awkward as in fight o'clock, or awkward as in this just isn't in your top 3?
Or awkward in the sense that you'll find out.
Okay. All right.
After I give my take on the track here. So, the overall, I'm going to start with the lyrics here. and how you said they were cryptic, and one of the lyric sets that you highlighted in the second verse where he's talking to the man who doesn't go mad, that was a lyrical highlight for me. I do like that notion of just keeping an even head with everything. I did like that quite a bit, and for me, yeah, the lyrics are a little cryptic, but I feel like the lyrics are mainly about a reflection of Tom's mental state during the time where he was blown up and his band was blown up in New York City, and having to deal with the hardships of dealing with the Marquee Moon, the fakeness and the artificialness of everything, and just balancing everything out while still trying to be a human being. So, that's how I took away from the track. I mean, lyrics are cryptic, but that's what I discovered. And yeah, the in the verses here, the guitar parts are really, really fun to listen to. Like you alluded to, I did appreciate your dissection starting out with the three different guitar parts doing three different things, and how they all each work in unison with each other, but they're each creating an atmosphere where you can't find the downbeat. So that was a great job by you there to kick off the discussion here. And I did enjoy the chorus with how well the band was jamming. The only critique I'm gonna have about the whole track as a whole is other than at the very end where the vocals get exposed on the production front, and some of the just how the vocals, how the chorus ends. I felt like in the start of the chorus, the vocals were kind of buried in the mix just a hair, but that might be just me. That might be me nitpicking. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it's funny that this track here has two guitar solos. The first guitar solo is fine. I mean, poor Richard Lloyd not getting nearly much credit when it comes to guitar solos on this track. But we have both praised the whole band's ability to interlock and create really good sonic backdrops for the listener to enjoy. I'm not going to really touch too much on that second solo because it is just fantastic with 3 C's, 7 S's, and 10 T's. So it was one of the moments that I knew that I spotted that genius annotation that you talked about, and I was just like, oh, okay. I'm just going to put my head back and just enjoy this guitar solo. And it was just absolutely heavenly bliss for me. And the fact that it ends, and it almost could have ended on that guitar solo, and it would have been a perfectly fine ending. And then it just picks back up. I did like that. That was an excellent touch. So the only other thing I got to say about Marquee Moon is it does land in my top 3. It is indeed my favorite song off the whole record.
Full respect to you on that. Again, I do think this is a great track, and I do understand your thoughts about the vocals on the chorus. I do think those could have been maybe a little clearer, but at the same time, considering how precise this band is, I'm willing to take their word for it and say that, hey, this is how we wanted it to sound, and this is what we wanted to go with. And as far as it not being my number 1, we'll get to that one where we get to that one. It just edged this one out by just a hair.
Curious to see what the number 1's gonna be. But before we go any further into Marquee Moon by Television and discover what your favorite track is, and maybe it could be 5 o'clock city here on Hey Listen to This. Matthew, James, Durzik, I have one question for you.
And what is that, Ryan James Kearns?
The question is, who allowed you to take my breath away? No, just kidding. The question is, if we are, in fact, taking the listener's breath away, in an enjoyment sense, and they want to help support what you and I do on a week in, week out basis. In terms of bringing up different albums to review, different things to introduce listeners to, and enjoying our conversation here. What are some ways that they can help support what you and I do, man? Because I'm totally lost in how to support us. I can barely support myself.
Well, that might be more of a you problem than anything else. But as far as the podcast is concerned, the way they can best support us is to keep listening, and if you like what you hear, you can find us on any platform of choice, whether it be podcasting platforms like Apple Music, Pocket Cast, or Spotify. Also, if you happen to have YouTube Music or not, you don't have to pay the premium subscription if you don't want to. But we are on YouTube with our own channel where we upload our episodes every week. So you can find us there as well. And if you like what you hear and you feel that someone that you are inclined to share music with might like us too, you could share it with them. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on any of the other platforms, do what it takes there to please the algorithmic gods, whether it's simply just playing it or sharing with a friend. And speaking of sharing, we are on social media as well. We are on Blue Sky. We are on Facebook. We are on Threads. We are on Instagram. And you can find us on any of those sites with the username ttheylisten. That is ttheylisten. And that is also our username on YouTube if you're looking for us there. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, whether it's some praise, some critique, suggestions for a future episode, you can email us directly at ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. That is if you do not know us directly. If you do know us directly, I mean, hey, you can just message either me or Ryan on all of our social media platforms, wherever you may find us. And yeah, that is how you can continue to help us push through to what is going to be year 3 for us, because we're almost, not only are we almost to 100 episodes, but I'm pretty sure we are past the 2-year mark as far as reviewing. We're at the very least getting close to it.
Yeah, I would be curious to find out what would be the 2-year mark. It would be, well, yeah, I think we're definitely past that. I don't know. We'll have to see. That would be a future Matt and Ryan discovery later on, and that would just be a simple journey into our YouTube page. Oh, not even our YouTube page, because I'm losing the ball here, man. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. For those of you who are listening, especially to me rambling about my train of thoughts here, I appreciate what any support that you've given us up until this point, even if it's as simple as just listening to this episode and listening up until this point. It means a lot. I mean, considering today's day and age, where you get fed music recommendations through an algorithm, and you're trusting us to talk about music in this kind of length here, and having us be your algorithm, for better for worse. I appreciate it. It's been a fun blast, and I appreciate Matt being such an excellent co-host here.
And I appreciate you being such an excellent co-host as well. This has been fun, because again, we've covered a lot of the musical landscape and a lot of our own musical thoughts and ideas. And I don't look to stop anytime soon. So again, thank you, Ryan, for being a great co-host. Thank you to the listeners for your support throughout these first almost 100 episodes / 2 years of this podcast. And continuing on with this episode, we are covering Marquee Moon by Television. We are on the back half of this record. And Ryan, I will throw it to you for track 5, which is the song Elevation.
Elevation, don't go to my head. No, anyways. Yeah, Elevation here. So one of the things I noticed right out of the gate here, the guitar line reminded me so much of a song that was released much later on. Do you know what song I'm kind of like hinting at here?
um, I think I might, but I'm not 100% sure.
"Loveful" by the Cardigans.
Okay, that's not the song I was thinking of.
Well, what song were you thinking of?
I don't remember. Because I feel like
Oh,
there's at least one song on this album where I was like, oh, that reminds me of that, but I forgot which song it was and what song it reminded me of. So that will have to be lost to history until I listen to this album again.
okay, sounds like a plan, man. But yeah, so yeah, I that was one thing I noticed like pretty much right out of the gate, and I did like that though. It didn't take away from the experience of the song whatsoever. That syncopated guitar line that I talk about is complemented so well by the bass, and like again, I'm gonna give the flowers to the backing band here. Like they really do a great job throughout the whole record, and like it even especially in this song here, setting a good backdrop in certain moments. The guitar solo from once again Richard Lloyd, not picking on the dude here. It's fine, it's solid, but nothing to really much write home about. I mean, it does, it's fine. It's not like earth shattering, and I think. What we and like more even specifically myself, I'm judging guitar solos based on the merits of like the title track, and that's not fair because that solo was well developed. It was a lot to breathe. Not so much here though, because the song's a little bit shorter. And yeah, so why is this my least favorite track off the whole record? You might be asking. So
here we go.
For a couple of reasons here. The lyrics here aren't really much. But from what I gather in the chorus, there's like some meaning about not letting fame affecting like your mental state or like affecting the product that you're producing. So like that was the only thing I was able to gather from there, and like that alone is not enough to like put this in a bottom track territory. What really did it for me was the chorus itself, and I kind of hate the chorus a little bit, not on the vocal front, not on the lyric front, but on the instrumental front. Do you know what moment I'm going to be talking about?
I know exactly what moment you're going to be talking about.
So, for those of you who are not picking up on what I'm putting down, Matt picked it up pretty well. Is just like the chorus itself would be fine, but there's like almost like a record skip moment where like the instrumentation just seems like it misses a beat. And it's a bit of a whiplash that I don't enjoy, and that's saying something for me because, like sometimes throughout music that we've discussed over the several episodes that we've done here, like I do enjoy like disjointed songwriting and like disjointed instrumentation. Not so much here. So yeah, that moment alone, like that moment when it does occur throughout the whole song here at several spots, that was enough alone to put this in a bottom track territory. I will say though, my earlier compliments of the track do stand. This is not a horrible track, but it's not a good track in my opinion.
So, good news. We are not going to be hearing the chimes of the grandfather clock, and we will not be fighting because this song is not my favorite on the album. So, I will say though, I am a little shocked that you have this as your bottom track because I thought those little skips, those little hiccups, as I wrote them down, I thought you were going to dig them, and apparently I misfired on that. So, not necessarily having the proper vision on that. But aside from that, I think this track's pretty solid. The rhythm section, picking up right where it left off, as far as just that interlock between bass, guitar, and drums, they are doing a really good job. I did not notice a solo as much myself. It didn't really stand out to me as much as, well, somewhat unfairly, Marquee Moon. I mean, what guitar solo is going to top that at this point? But you never know. And I agree that lyrically, from what I've read, that this is apparently a song about dealing with the elevation and living in like a high rise in New York City. Perhaps because of being famous in a band and making sure that doesn't go to his head, or just the fact of New York City not going to his head, which to me is a solid premise for a song. It's not necessarily an amazing premise, and I don't think the lyrics are super exquisite like they have been and eventually will be. But I thought that the hiccups were a bit of a ballsy move, and I'll admit the first couple times I listened to this album, they did kind of upset me too, but with time I've grown to appreciate them, because it'd be one thing if they skipped and then just acted as if it did skip, but if you count it, it does keep in time. It's just randomly in there. I think that's kind of a ballsy move. I thought it worked, but I can completely respect the fact that you were just like, nah, just no, not for me. So yeah. Elevation to me is a solid track. Not my top three though. It's a good song / great song bucket song for me.
I'm glad it's not 5 o'clock city here, man. And like for people out there that might be like typing in the comments section or yelling at their phones, if you're doing that, maybe go touch grass a little bit. It's not worth yelling at the phones here. I will point out the fact that me and Matt are not ignorant to the fact that the guitar skips that I detested and Matt appreciated in this track here. Yes, they are pretty evidently an illustration of elevation getting to someone's head and affecting themselves. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I just didn't like the execution of it. It was not a pleasant experience for me on the aesthetic front and just I would even say the intellectual front. But I digress, man. You ready to talk about the next track here, Guiding Light?
Yes, Guiding Light. And here we get what I would consider our first and not quite only, but definitely our first ballad on the record. It's probably the only ballad on the album and first of 2 slow songs. And man, it's so pretty. Just the way that the piano mixes with the guitar in the opening just sounds so almost like you're in a boat floating calmly on a lake at night. It's like 65 degrees or 70 degrees, and you're just in this moment of isolation and pure nighttime bliss. Like, instrumentally, it is an amazing sound that really does carry throughout the entirety of the song. The piano and the guitar interplaying with each other definitely shine through. And I really, really dug the chord changes on this track, especially on the chorus, where it just, once again, like Marquee Moon, sort of elevates, that just has that sort of soft drop-off back into the verses. I really, really like that a lot. That being said, this is a ballad, and Tom Verlaine's not necessarily a balladeer. He's not a Frank Sinatra or a Tom Jones or a Jim Morrison even. Not that he has to be, but it feels like for a track this sort of smooth and very almost floaty in a sense, his vocals being as angsty as they are do clash just a hair. I didn't hate them by any means. I did like them, and I did think he at least showed the range with dynamics, particularly on those drop-offs at the end of the chorus. I did appreciate his singing there. But once again, the key is that no matter what he is singing, he means 100% what he sings, which on this track is probably not a lot compared to most of the other tracks. Like, Elevation didn't have a lot of lyrics. I would say this track has even less lyrics, or at least less depth as far as the lyrics are concerned. I mean, basically it's kind of right there in the title. It's about a guiding light. So yeah. But this song just sounds so good. It is not my favorite track off the whole album, but it is definitely one of those tracks where when I listened to the album for the sake of this review, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how great this sounded. And that's what it is. It's a great sounding track, and I would put it in the great song bucket, but not enough to get into my top 3.
I think I might be a hair lower on this track than you. Like, I'll agree with you. Like coming right out of the gate, like this song here is a great sounding one, and like the thing that I really did appreciate about the track the most is like um I'll start like it might seem weird. I'm gonna start with the outro where how like the band was allowed to breathe and just vibe out towards the fade out of the whole track. I'm always a fan of tracks that allow instrumentation to breathe. Because you don't always need vocals, you don't always need lyrics. Like, the instrumentation can and should be able to carry the song in its own merits. So, yeah, that was the one main draw about the song for me. Just the overall instrumentation palette was really good. Like the instrumentation, like specifically in the verses, was like there are good performances that you can find throughout. The one highlight though I'm gonna give is to Fred Smith. The first time I mentioned him, other than the overview about the band here, he does do a great job during the verses. Like excellent moments there. Yeah, and the song really doesn't have much of a chorus. Like you kind of alluded to the fact that there really isn't like that much lyrical depth here. I mean, the way that I took the lyrics is just like, hey, Tom Verlaine he was experiencing darkness, and then he found this guiding light to pull him through the darkness. And the way that I took it as like that guiding light to symbolize was like love, a partner. So like I did like that notion. That's an excellent notion there, and I do like the lyrics overall. The imagery that's used throughout is very effective. I did appreciate that. And ladies and gentlemen, the running bit of me being very passive aggressive to Richard Lloyd throughout this whole review is coming to an end because this is indeed his last solo throughout the whole record. And this solo was found before the third verse, and I thought it was decent. Nothing to really write home about. But yeah, overall though, Guiding Light, solid song. Not in my top 3, obviously, but I do respect it, man.
Yeah, it's a very respectable song. Again, I think it's kind of weird. We were talking about this a couple weeks ago with Slint and Spiderland, how the instrumental there sort of it didn't halt momentum, but it definitely felt like a little bit of a downer. I almost feel like this song might have been slightly better as an instrumental. Not to say that what Tom Verlaine's doing is bad by any means. I think what he's doing is good, and I think he sings well. But again, the key to this song is the instrumentation just sounding pretty. It almost does feel like a true like jazz ballad type of song. You can hear the jazz influences in their playing on this track particularly. But yeah, I like this track, and I would say it definitely falls into the great song bucket. Like it falls between the category of top 3 and the other 2 tracks that start off this record. It falls into that category of the other 3. So with that being said, Ryan, are you ready to talk about the penultimate track off of Marquee Moon, which is Prove It?
I am indeed ready to prove it.
So go ahead and prove it. Let's open this case.
Oh man, so yeah, this song here was an absolute fun time for me. I'm going to start with the instrumentation during the verses, which seems to be a running bit throughout this whole review here. But like I can't help it. Like whenever I hear like great instrumental work, like my brain instantly gravitates towards it, and I do appreciate what it's laying down. And what it's laying down in the verses is like the guitar is doing kind of like an island vibe. Like that was the best descriptor that I could throw at it. But that's counteracted by the bass doing a great line. So like the dynamics between the guitar, which I don't know if it's Verlaine or Lloyd there. I think it like considering Verlaine does the solo here, it might actually be Lloyd. I don't know. I'm going to say Lloyd because I want to spread good vibes to Lloyd because I feel like I've been crapping on him for this whole review here. But like between Lloyd and Smith, like that, they're doing an excellent interplay during the verses. I really did appreciate that. And now here's where we get to the chorus where things stop and start and are all disjointed. And yes, those moments are very Ryan Kearns coded, like, to a T. Like, if you could have me write a song, that would be very much in my wheelhouse. And like another moment that I did appreciate quite a bit was the guitar line that occurred after the chorus, and it guides the listener into the next section. I thought that was an excellent touch, an easy passage for the listener to like jump in after experiencing the chorus in order to get to the next passage. Like, I thought that was excellent. I'm always a fan of that as well. The guitar solo here is okay, but it doesn't add much to the overall song, and it's pretty simple. So, sorry, Tom Verlaine. Like, you are not spared of the mediocrity of guitar solos that were not found in Marquee Moon. But I digress about that. The ending, though, dude, it is fun. I do like the fake out aspect about it, and the last line being like, "This case is closed." Like, I thought that was a fun moment, and like the way that it took the lyrics as a whole, though, to me, were they were depicting the picture of journey of life itself. And a lyrical highlight that I zoomed in on was now the rose, how it slows you in such colorless clothes. Fantastic! You lost your sense of human. And like for me, like I took that as like, as we get older, we lose our sense of humanity. Even though like there's such like, beauty around us, we just become numb to it. So yeah, the only thing I got to say about Prove it did indeed prove it to me, so much so that it did land in a top 3 spot for me. Ladies and gentlemen, we've completed my top 3 with Prove It landing at that 3rd slot.
Yeah, this track is quite fun indeed. And I agree. So you mentioned it, the island vibes of the guitar. I had it almost like a yacht rock type of vibe, which is amazing for a punk band or a band in the punk scene to even try to do yacht rock. But in a sense, it's kind of what it is. And I think that Tom Verlaine's vocals on this track are about as artsy and cryptic as ever. Because, again, his vocals, once again, sell the show. Like, you don't know what case he's solving if you're just listening to it without a lyric sheet in front of you. And you may not even know if you do have a lyric sheet in front of you what the hell he's talking about. But, once again, he knows what he's talking about, and he sings as confidently as he always does. The one part of this track I don't think you highlighted enough, or at least not as much as I'm going to. Billy Ficca's drumming is magnificent on this track. Like, the guitar sounds great from Verlaine and Lloyd. Fred Smith's bass does a very good job as well, but particularly on the parts before it stops in the chorus, and Tom Verlaine just sings a couple words, the drum fills that Billy is putting on is just ridiculous. Like, it's jazzy, but it's not overbearing. Like, it's not just a like it flows with the guitars and the song. He's almost like using his drum set as a guitar in of itself, which is just incredible. So I thought that was a very underrated moment. But the guitar does sound great, and once again, the rhythm section outside of the fills and the start-stop stuff does keep everything in line. I do agree with you that the little descending guitar pattern from the chorus into the verses is really, really nice. Yeah, Prove It is a strong, strong song, but it does not land in my top 3.
So one could say it did not prove it enough for you.
It did not. I will say, though, I would probably put this, depending on the day, I'd probably put this at a 4 or maybe a 5. Probably a toss-up with that. Maybe Guiding Light in there as well. But I'd probably put this over Guiding Light. I'd say this is my 4th favorite song on the album, but again, those records aren't necessarily kept as strongly as our top 3s. But yeah, I did like Prove It quite a bit. I think it's a nice little song, and again, just showcases the different type of styles that the band is trying to achieve with, again, just a basic lineup of 2 guitars, bass, and drums. It's impressive.
But not impressive enough as the act of tearing a curtain And with that being said, Matt, I'm gonna have you start out the discussion about the final track off the record, which is indeed your favorite track off the whole record. With that being Torn Curtain.
So before I get into my detailed analysis of this song, going back to the beginning when we were talking about me introducing you to this band on our trip back from Columbus on New Year's Day 2022, it was this song in particular I remember doing. Is like just turning it up. I was like, dude, listen to this. Hey, listen to this. And the reason is this song is just... Where do I even start? So, at the start, you have the drum opening from Billy Ficca, which is, once again, very orchestral, very... it isn't much more than a tom roll, but it does provide just a beautiful, ominous opening to this track, because when you think it's going to fade out, it hits you again with that second down beat of... like... And that leads into the song proper, where Tom Verlaine's guitar is just doing all the work on this track. And much like Guiding Light, but I'd say even better so, the interlocking of the guitar with the piano, the calm response that they have is just wonderful. And then it gets into the lyrics, which I would say are the best on the whole album. If for no other reason that they are the most empathetic lyrics on the album. Like, up to this point, most of what we've been hearing from Tom Verlaine is some sort of, like, poetry or some sort of almost in-joke or I know what's going on but you don't type of writing, which is completely fine. Because, again, he is saying with conviction throughout, and he knows what he's talking about and is presenting it in a strong way. But here the lyrics feel like they're very human and very empathetic to a human situation, particularly the loss of something, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, the loss of success, the loss of something. And when he's talking about lyrics such as love's all ridicule, torn curtain feels more like a rake, how much more can it take? That is... Again, not completely bare bones, I know what that guy's talking about, but it's as close as it comes, and his vocals on this track are easily the best, particularly on the chorus, when he's singing, flowing down like tears, holding back the years, and it's so good. And the way the band backs him up on the chorus by singing tears and years is really good. And the guitar solo that precedes the first two verses and choruses, the way that the chord changes just completely shift into this weird dark spot before rising back to the traditional chord pattern is very, very nice. But to me, the moment that this song just absolutely is like going through a car wash full of fish to be slapped in the face with is that final verse and the outro, where you get Tom Verlaine again singing feels like a rake, how much more can it take? Meanwhile, his guitar is doing this effect, which is either a cat meowing or the sound of a battery dying, like you're about to crash land into the ocean on a spaceship. And then when he says burn it down halfway through, right in the final chorus, that is a chef's kiss of a musical moment if I've ever heard one. And that's not even counting the outro itself, where, once again, we get a guitar solo that's maybe not quite on par with Marquee Moon, but pretty damn close, where you get that build, that tension, where it feels like he's rising to this boiling point, and then all of a sudden it just shuts down. Where you go from... I love that moment so much, too. I know Marquee Moon is seen like the crown jewel of this album, but for me, it's this song here. Torn Curtain is an absolute masterpiece of a closing track, and as anyone could filling out their scorecards may understand, it is my favorite track off this album.
Oh man, I feel a lot of pressure pulling up that. That's such such a loving review, man. But I mean, I agreed with like a lot of the things that you said. Like, for me, like I almost consider that. Well, in my head, I consider this to be one of the bigger songs off the record. Curious to maybe dive into the fact that this was a single. I would highly doubt that this was a single at the time. Actually, let me do a quick Google search so I can gather my thoughts here. Dun 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 dun. Nope, there's only 2 singles here. Can you guess what they were?
I'm going to guess it was the title track, and if my mind serves me correctly, I think Venus was the other one?
So the title track was the first single released April 1st, 1977. The second single was actually Prove It, released in July 22nd, 1977. So, which is interesting because this whole record was released in February 8th, 1977. But I mean, we live in a day and age where singles are more released like before the official albums are released. But I digress. Going down a rabbit hole that I don't need to go down to. Torn Curtain here. I agree with you that the lyrical nature and the execution of everything about like just the sorrows of being a human being and like just the like I don't say like the sense of grief of losing something, like that the curtain is torn. You can never go back. Something's been revealed. Something has been broken for you, and I do like that quite a bit. I'm not going to steal so much of your thunder because you did an excellent job laying down everything. The other bits that I'm going to cover though is I did enjoy the opening. I know that you commended the drummer Fika at the beginning here, but I did enjoy what Fred Smith was laying down in terms of like that fun bass line, and also the guitar line that's executed at the beginning. I did enjoy that as well. Like as the instrumentation as a whole, starting out with it being very loose and just almost kind of like jammy. It's a lot of fun, man. I always just love that. Like, just everything doesn't have to be like so precise. And the group has executed in prior tracks here that when it comes to precision, they can execute it to a T. But here, they're just having fun. They're just enjoying themselves. And the chorus was pretty good. I do agree. The back and forth between the vocals, where you get the band being like tears, years, fears, and all that stuff. And while Tom Verlaine's singing his part is really, really good. The little lick at the guitar, the little guitar lick at the end of the chorus, again, for me, I found that as a great passageway to guide the listener into the next section. Always a fan whenever bands and instrumentation does that, because it's a nice little note that I always pick up on, and I know it's done there for a purpose. This might be controversial. I might need to revisit the track here, but the guitar solo here was, again, pretty decent. Not much to write home about. I mean, and I will say though, the outro though, with the guitar, that was a much better solo, and the band just jamming as a whole, like riding the cows home with the repetition of like tears, years, and different variations, was an excellent way to close off the whole album and the whole track as a complete package. And for those of you who want a little bit of like maybe like a fun fact about this track here, the title of the track, Torn Curtain, is actually a reference to the 1966 Alfred Hitchcock film of said name. So, shout out to Alfred Hitchcock. I'm sure you're doing well out there. So, I do respect this song quite a bit. Catch Me on a Different Day, this could easily be a top 3 spot, but I did just enjoy. I did enjoy Prove It for what it was in there with the instrumentation, with all the fun different lines, and just the way it was very Ryan Cohn's coded, and then alongside with Friction as well, and then Marquee Moon. No one's touching that, in my opinion, even if Torn Curtain would pop into a top 3 spot. But yeah, I respect that this is your favorite song, man.
Yeah, it to me, it's just an absolute gem of a song because it definitely feels like a lot of times we get tracks that end things, like you get like the Beatles' A Day in the Life, or um, songs like Brighter Day from our Jellyfish review, where it feels like the end. Like, to me, musically and lyrically and vocally, I think this is a great job as any track I can think of as to sounding like the final piece of the project. So I love it a lot. And I understand it may not be everybody's like top track, but again, for me, that's what it is, and it's a magnificent piece of work.
Speaking about pretty good pieces of work, I'm not going to compare us to Torn Curtain and the album as a whole, but dear listener out there, and dear Matthew, you may have noticed that we've had 8 tracks up, and now those 8 tracks are down. Our scorecards are completely filled out. Top tracks identified. My bottom track has been identified. You said that there is no bottom track off this whole record. So there's only one thing left to say about this review.
We did it.
We did it, man. We walked into the street after looking at our television, and we saw the Marquee Moon, and we experienced what it was like to experience that Marquee Moon, man.
Yeah, and thankfully with minimal friction.
So I'm gonna go first in terms of my overall thoughts and feelings about the record, and my overall rating. So for me, this record here was a really good time for me in terms of like exploring what this band had to offer. Like, you know, like I alluded to at the start here, like this was the musical equivalent of being introduced to something and just thrown in the fridge and forgetting about it years later. So very grateful for the ability to dive into the record. Several moments throughout this whole record that I've already kind of gushed about, with the instrumentation just being a lot of fun. Like the 2 out of the 3 tracks here, in terms of my top tracks, I highlighted specifically for the uniqueness of the instrumentation, whether between like Friction and Prove It, Marquee Moon, the guitar solo instantly landed it in a top spot, the top spot for me. But yeah, I did have my issues with Elevation though, and maybe upon further listens of that track and this album as a whole, maybe those reservations about the moment in that track might deteriorate over time, or just like, you know, I might just get over it. But in terms of an overall rating, though, I had to compare this in my head between like my appreciation with Purple Rain and Slint, which, for those of you who are kind of curious, I gave Slint, the Spiderland album that we discussed, a 9.5 out of 10. I gave Purple Rain a 9 out of 10. I would say that I enjoy those albums a bit more, specifically in that order, obviously, as evident by my rating. So I'm gonna give Marquee Moon by Television just a tick lower than the rating that I gave Purple Rain. In that, I'm gonna give this album a solid 8.5 out of 10.
And for me, this album is, to me, one of the most unique sounding albums of all time. Like, it has a blend of vocal angst that you identify with punk, guitar work that you might identify with the likes of Southern rock or maybe 70s rock like Eric Clapton or the Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner. I'll even throw the Grateful Dead in there. They have the poetic nature of a Leonard Cohen or a Joni Mitchell, and yet somehow combining elements from all those camps and coming up with something of their very own. And after the first 2 tracks, which are solid but not necessarily spectacular, pretty much every track afterwards has some moment of spectacularity. Whether it's the groove on Friction, whether it's the wonderful guitar solo on Marquee Moon along with the impassioned singing, the little hiccups and the grooviness of Elevation, the Ageliac sounds of Guiding Light with the dueling piano and guitar interwoven together, Prove It with the yacht rock sounds, the crazy drumming, and the stutter stops. and Torn Curtain, which I'm not even going to add any more to what I've already said. To me, this is one of those rare albums that fits into so many categories as the best of, and yet somehow doesn't feel like it belongs there. Like, I would consider this an art rock album. I would consider this a punk album. I would consider this a DIY album, or a DIY album, excuse me. I would consider this an indie rock record. And while it isn't really any of those things, I would consider it to be all those things unto itself. And to me, I would say for the streaming era, where you can just find music as easily as you can, I would say this is an album worthy of a physical copy in some form, whether it's CD, vinyl, cassette tape, however, because if by some bizarre chance the grids ever go down and we no longer can do streaming and we're no longer connected through the internet, if you have access to listen to an album like this, I would highly recommend it. All of which to say, I am going to give Marquee Moon by Television a beefy, fishy, slappy 10 out of 10.
We have a 10, everybody! Alert the fire department! Oh my goodness, man. So, one, we break a streak where we've essentially shared, like, you know, I mean, like, I think it was mainly from albums that came out of your camp, but, like, you know, we had a groove going on for like a little bit where we were picking similar scores, but I digress. I'm glad that you gave this album a 10. Even if Elevation didn't exist or that moment didn't exist, I don't know if I would give it a 10. I would probably give it like a 9 or a 9.5. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are wondering about the math here, I gave the album an 8.5 out of 10, and Matthew gave it a beefy, going through a car wash where you get slapped by fish all the time, a fishy 10 out of 10. So that averages out to a average score of 9.25 out of 10 because
Math
works for everyone. It does not discriminate. It does not hate. It's just numbers, man. And in terms of next album recommendations for me, I kind of bounce back and forth between a couple different avenues I could have went down. I was going to recommend Husker Du's Zen Arcade, but then I realized that wasn't really along the same kind of spirit here. I was going to maybe recommend an Idols record, or even go down the route of going in terms of a modern band, another modern band called Yard Act, with one of their records. But I decided to take a album out of a band's catalog that the said band is the other band we could have covered this week. In that being The Clash, and said album being London Calling. London Calling by The Clash, fantastic album, explores several different styles of music, very much rooted in the punk rock, but kind of has like the jazz element throughout the whole album. So I felt that was an excellent comparison here. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed Marquee Moon by Television and you're looking for your next album recommendation, check out London Calling by The Clash. And even if you were already familiar with that record, you know, do yourself a favor. Go put it on. Treat yourself to good things. You deserve good things.
Yeah, that is a great album. And honestly, I would probably say it's probably the best comparison to this album that I could think of. And I'm surprised that I didn't think of it. So I thank you for suggesting that album. As far as my next album recommendation, I thought about going with the Talking Heads album. Not the one we talked about, which was Speaking in Tongues, because that's a little too dancey and new wavy. Great album, but not quite what this album brings to the table. So, based on the guitar sounds of this album, the guitar interplay, the album I'm going to recommend next is from 1972. It is the album Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones. And again, the guitar work on that album, I would say, is very much in tune with the guitar work on this album. And while that album's more focused on like blues instead of art, and more like on the underground roots of rock compared to the modern new wave sound, I would say if you're looking for great guitar work that parallels Marquee Moon, Exile Main Street is the way to go, because the stuff that Keith Richards and Mick Taylor are doing on that record are really, really good. So, yeah, Exile Main Street by the Rolling Stones, my next album recommendation.
I'm gonna have to check out that album. I know, like, in the past, specifically between you and I poo-pooed on the Rolling Stones. But I'm gonna I'm gonna approach Exile with new ears, new mind, and I'm gonna give it a chance, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize, our average rating for Marquee Moon by Television was a 9.25 out of 10. I recommended London Calling by The Clash, and Matt recommended
Exile Main Street by the Rolling Stones.
So check out those albums. Check out if you got to this point in the review, you've not decided to explore Marquee Moon by Television. I mean, what more do we have to say? Because we literally ran out of stuff to say about this review here, man.
Yeah. And what a review it was! I'm so glad that you chose this album, because it's always been one of my favorites to talk about and listen to.
I am happy that I chose this album as well. Like I said at the beginning of the review, I knew that this album was in your rotation and you did appreciate it quite a bit. But the main thing that really drove me to really dive into this record is that Thurston Moore biography, where he's talking about Television. I'm like, wait, I recognize that band name. Let me pull that out from the back of my fridge and maybe consider bringing it up for the podcast here. So, speaking about bringing stuff up for the podcast and reviews, Matt, we have one more thing to discuss before we close this case of this episode. Where are we going next? What is where is our journey taking us next, man?
So, the last few albums that we've done, and not that that's a bad thing, we've skewed a little older on a lot of the past albums that we've done. Because I know you're doing your series of going back to albums that were released before the year 2000, but the last couple of mine have fallen into that category as well. So I'm going to switch things a little bit, and I'm also going to switch genres, because it feels like we haven't talked about a hip-hop record on this show in a while. So I say we bring some hip-hop back into our repertoire. And in that regard, I'm going to have you choose between two artists that these albums that are up for contention have sampled. So, are you ready, Ryan?
I am ready, man. I'm intrigued to see what you got in your behind door number 1 and door number 2 for me.
Okay, so your two options for this week and what album we're going to talk about is either Outkast or Demi Lovato.
Oh. I'm gonna go on my curiosity. I'm gonna go Demi Lovato.
Okay. All right. So we are going to be talking about a hip hop album that I've actually recommended at least once, if not twice, in our show closings as far as an album to listen to next. And we are heading back to the motherland of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for this next album. Although technically, it is not an album. It is considered a mixtape, but I consider it an album because it's long enough and, in my idea, showcases everything an album should be. So, with that said, we are heading back to the year of 2010. And we're going to be discussing one Wiz Khalifa and his album / mixtape called Kush and Orange Juice on next week's show.
Let's experience some Wiz Khalifa and Kush and Orange Juice with our next review, man. I haven't listened to this album at all. In full disclosure, I have outside of singles and features, I've never dove into it Wiz Khalifa appropriately. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he has to offer in this album here specifically.
Yeah, I think next week is going to be a fun review, talking about Alderdice's own Wiz Khalifa, sort of putting his name out there on the map with his final release before going into a full-fledged album discography. But we'll discuss all that next week. But for now, Ryan, that's it for this week in talking about Marquee Moon by Television. Do you have any final thoughts before we kick this review into bed?
I only have 4 words, and those 4 words are, this case is closed.